this is I kind of want to open this up because there's a whole thing going on right now with child actors. I'm gonna read a post by by Jay Lewis, aka Little JJ. He posted on Facebook, "Just Jordan got canceled. I ain't giving up no ass. LOL."
Remember Lil JJ? The kid who went from roasting grown comedians at just 11 years old to starring in his own Nickelodeon sitcom. He was supposed to be the next big thing. And then, out of nowhere, he vanished. No new shows, no Hollywood glow up. Nothing. The story behind why Lil JJ disappeared isn't just unexpected. It's the kind of truth that'll leave you shocked because it had nothing to do with scandal, but everything to do with how the industry really works. By age 8, this kid was different. Not just telling little knock-knock jokes, not the "ha-ha, that's cute" type. He was crafting polished stand-up sets, actual material, the kind of jokes adults would expect from someone twice, maybe 3 times his age. Teachers noticed. His classmates noticed. You give him a show-and-tell slot, and instead of holding up some rock or toy car, he's dropping observational one-liners about school life and leaving the whole room cracking up. Sharp timing, confidence, a natural feel for comedy. That's how early the signs were. No one had to push him into this. He was already pushing himself into the spotlight. And here's the thing, that wasn't just a childhood phase. At 9 years old, when most kids are trying to memorize multiplication tables, he was stepping up on stage at a local talent show. Picture this, a little kid barely tall enough to reach the mic stand, stepping up in front of a full audience. Everyone's expecting cuteness, maybe some awkward giggles, but instead, they get a 5-minute comedy act with flawless timing. Not stuttering, not fumbling, just pure, confident delivery. And then the wildest part, a standing ovation that lasted 5 straight minutes. Adults who'd been watching comedy for decades were shocked. Who gives a 9-year-old that kind of reception? Someone who is about to make history. That night changed everything. Word spread around Little Rock like wildfire. Suddenly, comedy clubs, actual adult comedy clubs, wanted him on their stage. Think about that. A kid who still had to be in bed by 9 p.m. was now being invited to perform for grown-up crowds. His parents hesitated at first. Who wouldn't? A 10-year-old in comedy clubs? But the demand was insane. Soon enough, at just 10 years old, James was performing regularly in front of packed adult audiences. And he wasn't there as a novelty act either. He was billed as a prodigy comedian. That label stuck. He was no longer just a funny kid. He was Arkansas's rising star. Now, let's jump to 2003. James is 11 years old, and Little Rock is already too small for what's coming next. His family finds out about BET's coming to the stage. This was no kiddie talent show. This was a national competition, the real deal, and the contestants were seasoned comedians. James didn't roll up with some Hollywood coach or fancy studio tape. No, his audition was literally recorded in his modest Arkansas home on a basic camera. That raw tape, just him, nothing fancy. Bet watched it and said, "Get this kid to Los Angeles." Imagine being 11 years old, standing backstage at a national comedy competition, surrounded by adults who've been grinding in comedy clubs for years. Most kids would have frozen up. Not James. When his name was called, he walked onto that stage like he'd been doing it his whole life. His delivery was sharp. His jokes landed. The audience erupted. The adult comedians in the room were looking around like, what just happened? Who is this kid? Judges didn't even hesitate. James Charles Lewis III, better known as Lil JJ, was crowned the winner of Coming to the Stage. He wasn't just another contestant, he was the youngest performer ever to dominate that stage. 11 years old. That win was more than a trophy. It was an explosion. And once he won, the floodgates opened. Talent agents started calling his family's house in Arkansas non-stop. TV stations wanted interviews. Comedy festivals that normally had age limits were bending the rules just to get him in. He became the one everyone wanted. People called him the miracle child, and for once, it didn't sound like hype. He had just taken on the national stage and crushed it. Now, here's where the story shifts gears. By late 2004, the Lewis family made the decision that changed everything. They packed up and left Little Rock. Gone was the safety and familiarity of Arkansas. They headed straight into the Lion's Den, Los Angeles. Hollywood. It wasn't an easy choice. Financially, it was brutal. The move strained the family. They maxed out credit cards, uprooted their lives, and left behind everything comfortable. But they were chasing the dream that every scout, every Hollywood insider had dangled in front of them. Big contracts, TV shows, movies, and generational wealth. And Hollywood was waiting. Scouts and agents were lining up, pitching James as the future of entertainment. They didn't just see him as a comedian. They talked about movie stardom, hosting gigs, merchandising. Picture action figures, branded products, the whole machine built around one kid. The numbers they threw around sounded unbelievable to a working-class Arkansas family. And through it all, James was relentless. He knew exactly what he wanted. He begged his parents to let him chase it. He was certain that his destiny wasn't just in Arkansas stages, but in the heart of Hollywood. By the time he was 14, James officially embraced the name that would define his career, Lil JJ. This wasn't a side hustle anymore. This was full-time. Auditions, shows, the grind. The Lewis family had taken a massive risk, and now all the pressure was on their son to turn those promises into reality. He wasn't the funny kid from school anymore. He was a professional performer with the entire entertainment industry watching him. By 2005, Lil JJ was no longer just the prodigy from Arkansas. He was now face-to-face with one of the biggest stages for child entertainers in the world, Nickelodeon. Imagine being 15 years old, standing in line with dozens of hungry young actors, all fighting for the same shot. This was the casting call for All That, Nickelodeon's flagship sketch show, and the competition was fierce. Most kids came in with rehearsed lines, robotic delivery, smiling the way they thought the producers wanted. But then Lil JJ stepped in. This wasn't some kid reading a script. This was a live wire. He improvised, flipped lines, and injected the same energy that had carried him from Little Rock to BET. Nickelodeon executives weren't just impressed, they were floored. Here was a teenager who didn't need their training wheels. He already had timing, stage presence, and charisma in a way most child actors only dreamed about. So, when the decision came down, it was easy. Lil JJ secured the role of hosting Vital Information in the 10th season of All That. Every week, millions of kids across America tuned in to watch. And you could see it in the data. Research showed audiences were literally clicking in just for his segments. Parents didn't mind either. His humor was clean but sharp, family-friendly but actually funny. That balance made him stand out. Nickelodeon thought they were just plugging him into a segment. What they actually did was create a ratings magnet. Now, let's move into Tool 7. This is when Nickelodeon decided to double down. January 7th, 2007, they premiered a brand new sitcom called Just Jordan. And it wasn't just some generic teen show with recycled tropes. The plot was loosely based on JJ's real life, a teenager moving from Arkansas to Los Angeles to live with his grandfather. It was practically his story, fictionalized just enough for TV. Season 1 ran for 13 episodes, and right away the show carved out an identity. The hook was simple, but effective. It wasn't about magical powers or wacky gimmicks. It was about a relatable kid trying to navigate a new city, family responsibilities, and teenage life. That realism gave it authenticity. Critics noticed it. They praised it for emotional relatability and the fact that the lead actor wasn't just playing some watered-down version of a teen. He was bringing raw performance into a Nickelodeon sitcom, and behind the curtain, the credibility was strong too. Ralph Farquhar, the same guy who worked on Moesha and The Proud Family, was producing. That meant this wasn't just a Nickelodeon experiment. It had real pedigree. Lil JJ's name was the one above the title. Just Jordan was built around him. And for a teenager, that was the ultimate validation. Every week, kids saw him as the face of Nickelodeon's new generation. He wasn't doing sketch comedy anymore. He was carrying an entire sitcom on his back. But that kind of spotlight comes with pressure, and it got even more intense with Season 2. September 2007, the second season launched, this time in front of a live studio audience. That might sound exciting. Extra energy, louder laughs, more authentic reactions. But for a teenage lead, it also meant every stumble, every missed line, every crack in timing happened in real time. There was no safety net. The demands skyrocketed overnight. The writers pushed the show further too. Instead of sticking to lighthearted storylines, they experimented with more ambitious plots. They gave JJ's character deeper challenges, more nuanced relationships, and situations that demanded actual acting chops, not just punchlines. And he rose to the challenge. The kid who had once been the class clown was now proving he could handle drama. Ratings stayed steady. Nickelodeon executives started whispering about longevity. Maybe Just Jordan could run like their other big hits. Maybe JJ would become one of those rare child stars who smoothly transitions into bigger roles. But the thing about television is, timing is everything. And JJ's timing was about to collide with one of the worst industry crises in modern TV history. November 5th, 2007. That was the day the Writers Guild of America went on strike. For 100 straight days, Hollywood was paralyzed. No new scripts, no rewrites, no production. Entire shows went dark. For juggernauts with loyal fan bases, like The Office or Grey's Anatomy, it was a painful pause, but they had the audience loyalty to bounce back. For new shows like Just Jordan, still fighting to cement their place, it was catastrophic. Episodes already shot kept airing, but no fresh content could be produced. Momentum vanished. Kids flipped channels. Audiences drifted. And when the strike finally ended on February 12, 2008, Nickelodeon scrambled to put things back on track. But the numbers weren't the same. The audience that had sampled Just Jordan in its first 2 seasons wasn't guaranteed to return. The cold math of television kicked in. Ratings had dipped. Budgets were stretched thin. Executives didn't see a runaway hit anymore. They saw a risk. So despite positive reviews, despite the fact that JJ had delivered in every way asked of him, Nickelodeon pulled the plug. On August 23, 2008, the final episode of Just Jordan aired. That was it. 2 seasons, 29 episodes, and the dream was over. Think about it. In less than 2 years, Lil JJ went from being Nickelodeon's golden boy to having his entire show canceled. And the craziest part, he was only 18 years old. An adult on paper, sure, but still just a teenager in reality. One strike, one business decision, and the show that could have defined the next chapter of his career was erased. By the time Lil JJ turned 18, the spotlight that once followed him everywhere suddenly cut out. One moment, he was the face of Nickelodeon's new generation. The next, he was staring into silence. No auditions, no callbacks, no buzzing phones. Nothing. This was the kid critics praised for being natural, authentic, and funny. And yet, overnight, Hollywood acted like he didn't exist. The excuses started floating around. Casting directors whispered the same tired lines. He was too old for kid roles, but too young for adult ones. Translation: Hollywood didn't know what to do with him, so instead of taking a risk, they shut the door. And then came the other label, the one no actor wants to wear: difficult. JJ had a habit of suggesting script changes, tossing in improvisations, and giving input on how a scene could hit harder. To a normal person, that sounds like creativity. To Hollywood executives, it sounded like insubordination. They didn't want a teenager with opinions. They wanted a puppet. And because he refused to play that part, he paid the price. Hollywood didn't blacklist him with a press release or an announcement. No, they did something more brutal. They froze him out, quietly, silently. His exile began not with a scandal, not with a meltdown, but with a chilling absence of opportunities. And that kind of silence hits harder than any tabloid headline. So what do you do when the machine shuts you out? JJ didn't spiral like so many other child stars. No mugshots, no rehab headlines, no wild scandals. Instead, he did something nobody expected. He went back to school. Arkansas Baptist College welcomed him as a student, not a celebrity. He joined Omega Psi Phi fraternity, finding brotherhood outside the entertainment circus. While Hollywood pretended he didn't exist, he was carving out a different identity. But make no mistake, he never fully stepped away from comedy. He couldn't. It was in his blood. He still performed in small comedy clubs. Sometimes he'd pop up, reminding audiences of that sharp timing and confident delivery. He even landed a spot on Wild 'N Out, proving he still had the wit and improvisational chops. But those appearances weren't Hollywood rolling out the red carpet. They were scraps. They were reminders that the talent never died, even if the industry tried to bury it. Fans noticed his absence. They whispered, "Where did Lil JJ go? How does a kid go from a national BET win, from carrying a Nickelodeon sitcom, to near invisibility?" And the answer was frustratingly simple. He didn't self-destruct. He didn't get into crime. He didn't overdose. He just didn't play the Hollywood game. And the game doesn't forgive that. And then, in March 2024, the silence around him got broken in the loudest way possible. The ID channel dropped a documentary that sent shockwaves through television. Quiet on Set: The Dark Side of Kids TV. This wasn't just another behind-the-scenes feature. It was an exposé, tearing open the carefully hidden secrets of Nickelodeon's golden years. For decades, Nickelodeon was sold to parents as the safe channel, the family-friendly empire. But Quiet on Set exposed the rot. It laid out the toxic culture. Former child stars started talking, and the stories were brutal. Drake Bell went on camera, revealing he'd been abused by Brian Peck, a Nickelodeon dialogue coach, starting when he was just 15. It wasn't just one story. It was a pattern. The documentary painted a picture of an industry where children were treated like property, where predators hid in plain sight, and where producers like Dan Schneider were accused of creating environments that were anything but safe. The public was stunned. Parents who had parked their kids in front of Nickelodeon shows for years were horrified. The question became bigger than the stars on screen. If it happened to Drake, to Amanda Bynes, to Jennette McCurdy, then who else? And that's when Lil JJ's name got dragged back into the spotlight. Fans who remembered his rise started flooding social media. Where was Lil JJ? What was his story? People tagged him in posts, asking him to confirm the nightmare stories. The assumption was automatic. If he had been there, he must have gone through the same thing. That was the public's logic. And suddenly, a man who had been living outside the spotlight for over a decade was forced back into it, cornered by curiosity and suspicion. For JJ, the pressure was enormous. Say nothing, and people would assume the worst. Say something, and no matter what he said, it would blow up. That was the trap. Every eye turned to him, waiting for a confession. Social media doesn't give you space to think. It demands answers. And on March 20th, 2024, Lil JJ gave them one. He didn't release a polished statement. No carefully worded PR-crafted message. No lawyer-approved press conference. He went raw. He went on Facebook and dropped a line that nobody saw coming. "Just Jordan got canceled. I ain't giving up no ass, lol." That was it. That was the post. Crude, blunt, unfiltered, and it sent shockwaves. The internet froze for a second. People who remembered him as the clean-cut, charismatic Nickelodeon star were stunned. Was he joking? Was he serious? Did he just confirm something or deny it? The phrasing was messy, but the meaning was clear. He was saying that he hadn't been abused. He was shutting down the assumption that every Nickelodeon kid had been a victim. And the reaction? Explosive. Some praised him for being honest. They said it took guts to refuse the victim narrative and speak his truth, even if he did it in the most shocking way possible. Others hated it. They said the language was offensive, that it was disrespectful to real survivors, that he was minimizing the trauma of others. But whether you loved it or hated it, you couldn't ignore it. That one post dragged him back into the spotlight after years of silence. What it also revealed was the real reason for his disappearance. Hollywood didn't erase him because he was abused. They erased him because he wouldn't let them control him. He refused to bend. He wouldn't play the obedient child star who just reads lines and keeps quiet. He wanted input, independence, and authenticity. And Hollywood has no patience for that. They don't blacklist you with headlines. They blacklist you with silence. No roles, no calls, no chances. That Facebook post, crude as it was, became a symbol. It wasn't a career comeback. It wasn't an apology. It was a middle finger to the entire system that tried to bury him. The industry silenced his career, but they couldn't silence his voice.